We're gonna.
Pardon me? It is. Okay, can we move now to item number 20?
Sure, Commissioners. Tab 20 is an informational item. In addition to mitigating greenhouse gas emissions, it's important for the public sector to ensure that our communities and infrastructures are resilient to impacts such as sea level rise and severe storm activity. For several years now, Caltrans has been working on the preparation of statewide studies to help determine potential locations on the state highway system that may be subject to climate change-related impacts. Caltrans is in the process of preparing an assessment for each of their 12 districts. Caltrans should be commended in planning for these potential impacts to the state's transportation infrastructure. And with that, Marlon's been introduced several times, so he doesn't need an introduction.
Marlon Day at CTC.
Thank you again. To talk to you a little bit about what we're doing as far as our vulnerability assessments go. So the intent of these studies is to provide the latest scientific information on climate and data to support adaptation planning and to improve the resiliency of the state highway system. Vulnerability assessments include the 5 climate stressors for the horizons of 2050, 2070, and 2100. And the stressors include sea level rise, storm surge, precipitation, increased temperatures, as well as wildfire projections. We made a lot of progress over the past couple of years getting these studies done. We basically rolled these out in batches. We have about 10 districts where we had the vulnerability assessment reports that are done. And so our first group was in District 4, where it focused on sea level rise and coastal issues. In our second group, which includes Districts 2 and 6 that focus on wildfires and heat stressors. In our third group, that includes Districts 7, 8, and 11. That includes coastal issues as well as flash flooding and urbanized environments. And then in our fourth group, Districts 10 and 12, that focuses on coastal issues in addition to extreme heat and flash flooding. Just this month, we produced our fifth group, which includes District 3 and 9. And this focuses on Sacramento Delta issues as well as wildfire and flash flooding. We're going to have 2 more we hope to release by the end of this month in Districts 1 and 5, where those will be focusing in on coastal issues as well and wildfires. So the products for each of the 12 districts, there's basically 3 different components. So we have our summary report, a technical report, and then we have an online viewer tool. Each district will receive 2 reports. So there's a summary report that provides a visual highlight of characteristics of the district, information and statistics for all the climate change impacts that are projected to occur within each district. We also have a technical report that provides data sets used in the analysis and methodology for conducting the assessments. And then there's an online viewer that allows users to toggle stressors on and off to visualize where vulnerabilities are located by post mile. This effort provides a uniform approach, climate information, data sets to internal and external partners regarding climate adaptation and implementation. As far as next steps, we are going to be identifying opportunities within Caltrans to look at our policies and procedures to integrate climate change adaptation measures, including greening infrastructure solutions. And so we will be completed this by 2019, and we're going to be coordinating with our internal programs to roll this out. Step 2 is to begin to utilizing the results of the vulnerability assessments and developing district-specific adaptation plans using weighted scoring approaches, identifying identifying assets at highest risk of climate impact. And this will be completed by the end of 2021. And I think I got out of sync with some of my slides, so I apologize. I got a little ahead of myself. But I'll be happy to take any questions that you may have.
Yes, Commissioner Kehoe.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. They give you all the easy jobs, huh? I just want to put another little bean in your bonnet about Del Mar and the Del Mar Bluffs. The train tracks are up on the top of the bluffs, but those bluffs are very vulnerable to toe erosion down at the beach level. And then just, I don't know, less than 2 miles away, there's a big stretch of beach that's almost at sea level, Solana Beach, Carlsbad area, that gets on high tides or, you know, those seasonal, very high tides, it's already flooding. And, you know, the Scripps Institution of Oceanography does a lot of climate change studies. They're looking, they're looking at the condition of the bluffs and what land use development does to compacting the soils and making them even more fragile. So there's so much work to be done there. And I look all at the maps you're showing, there are needs all over the, excuse me, I'm sorry, needs all over the state. And I'm super sympathetic that you have to prioritize. But again, the train tracks are already there. They're used 24/7. We really need to look at that urgently and make sure that we're doing our best to stabilize them now and move them as soon as possible. Thank you. Thanks, Madam Chair. I really appreciate your patience.
No problem. Any other comments, suggestions? Okay, I have a public comment. Liz Ames from BART.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Madam Chair, and our Secretary Kim, and our new Director, Caltrans Director. Thank you, and also Executive Director Susan Branson. I met her at this last seminar. I really appreciate this. So I am a BART Director. I was elected, this is in the North Bay, in Northern California, the Bay Area Rapid Transit. And I was elected last November. And I was the underdog. I funded my own campaign. I was outspent 9-1. And I really feel empowered because I am the outspoken advocate. I hate to say activist, but you know, I really, I think it resonated with the community that enough is enough. We have a lot of congestion. We have a job housing imbalance. I know Commissioner Gardino, who is in this Santa Clara County area. We have a job housing imbalance where the peninsula has a lot of jobs. San Francisco has a lot of jobs. And a lot of people live further away, and they're commuting one direction. And then they commute through my area, District 6, which is Fremont, Union City, Newark, South Hayward, all the way into southern Alameda County, into Sunol, through beautiful Niles Canyon, which I'd say is the Lake Tahoe of Alameda County. But people travel through that Highway 84, and it's gridlock. It's a parking lot, and it goes one way to the peninsula, San Francisco, and then also to San Jose. So job housing imbalance is a problem in the community that resonated with people. And so I'm advocating for job centers at the BART stations, not just housing. I don't want to really get into housing at the BART parking lots, but if we have to, we need to help the communities, so be it. But I really want to have jobs at BART because that's a reverse commute. The other issue is that I ran on is quality of life. And there's a lot of components with quality of life, parks, open space, conserve our natural environment, conserve Niles Canyon, which is our water supply. Yet we've got this traffic that's funneling through our cities, going from the peninsula to the valley, and it goes through this beautiful resource, which is our water supply. So that's really what I ran on, is really quality of life. And I think when you talk about transportation, like how we got here, it didn't happen overnight. You know, General Eisenhower, after World War II, he, became president, and then he built highways through our country. And then what we did is, I love Mark Thomas presenting this history of our freeways, ironically. So we built highways through our country, wonderful, right? But then we put our research parks right off the freeway. So we've got now Facebook right off the freeway, off of Highway 84, right over the Dumbarton Bridge. Total gridlock. I was an engineer for 30 years, and I would practice in Palo Alto, and now it takes about 3 hours to go 20 miles from the East Bay to Palo Alto, and then Palo Alto back. It's about an hour and a half back, or sometimes 2 hours, and if there's an accident, good luck, it's 4 hours. So we built our highways thinking about the car and also our research parks. We thought right out, we need to talk about, throughput. This is what I hear a lot on the commission even now. But now we're looking at safety, we're looking at quality of life, and people want small town living, okay? They want a community. So to get that, we want to make sure that people don't get injured. We need lighting on our streets. We want to prevent people getting struck by vehicles. And just 2 days before Thanksgiving, a resident of Fremont was killed with her dog. And this was because it was kind of a pass-through to Highway 84 Niles Canyon from 880. It's kind of a shortcut that people use. And it's dark. But people speed through there, and and I'm sure this person likely doesn't live in Fremont. They're probably passing through town, who knows? I mean, that's speculation. But eventually, what's happening is people are passing through our towns, and we're not living, working, playing, shopping in town. This is what people want. So I just wanted to touch upon climate change, because I think this whole transportation system really is impacting our climate, and it's our quality of life. And they say, I think 60% of our greenhouse gases, if I'm not spoken on this, is the biggest contributor to greenhouse gases.
Okay, Liz, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap it up.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. So I would say, I've read some books on this, and they say, we want to how do we reduce our vulnerability with no regrets? They say improve climate forecasting. Well, Caltrans has done some of this work. We want to reduce biodiversity loss, and we want to improve water, land, and air quality. But how do we do this? How do we work together? We've never done this before. We know that climate change in the next 80 years or so temperatures might increase 8 degrees. So now our agricultural land is at risk, because our pollinators are not going to be producing food as aggressively as they are now. And then we've got sea level rise. So what are we going to do? Build levees around the bay? We haven't talked about this comprehensive plan to protect our infrastructure that we've already developed. So in short, I think that we should talk, to Caltrans and figure out ways to reinvest our money, not so much in roads, but also to enhance our environment and our natural resources, because to me, that's economic development. You can't just ignore climate change without thinking about our natural environment, and that improves quality of life, and then eventually that's economic development.
Okay.
So
we got to wrap. Sorry.
So thank you so much for allowing me to speak today, and I'm going to be back in January because I'm here I have a special project that I want to preserve some farmland that Caltrans has. We want to preserve that in my town in Union City, and I'll be back in January. But again, that's going towards mitigation matching and trying to address climate change impacts through mitigation of projects. Thank you so much.
Okay.
And you have a big job. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are now going to move on. We're on to item 21. Terry.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Item 21 is an action item. At the October 2019 Commission meeting, the Commission approved criteria for Caltrans for determining if work completed would constitute a fix for meeting the SB1 target of fix not less than an additional 500 bridges by 2027. The intent of this target and the associated additional funding provided by the passage of SB1 was to focus attention on repairs to bridges that would extend their service life. To better align the definition of a fixed bridge with the intent of SB1, Commission staff recommends revised criteria to define which projects should be considered as a bridge fix. Additionally, staff recommends that no later than the March 2020 Commission meeting, the Department, using this revised definition, provide the Commission with a report that includes Data from the 5 years preceding the passage of SB1 to establish a baseline accomplishment level for the average number of bridges completed by the department. Number 2, annual benchmarks to measure the degree to which progress is made towards achieving the 2027 targets. And 3, report on the progress that the department has made over the past 2 years towards fixing an additional 500 bridges. Staff recommends approval of this item.
Okay, I had a move by Commissioner Alvarado. I heard a second by Commissioner von Konynenberg. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Okay, now we'll go on to 22. Terry?
Sure. Commissioners, item 22 is also an action item. SB1 requires the department to report to the Commission on its progress toward meeting the targets and performance measures established for the asset management plan, and requires the Commission to evaluate the effectiveness of the department in reducing deferred maintenance and improving road conditions on the state highway system, as demonstrated by the progress made by the goals set forth in SB1. The department provided a report of its progress to the Commission at the October 2019 meeting. The data included in that report was asset conditions as of December 31st, 2018. Commission staff has discussed with the department the desire to have the report provided in a timelier manner, and therefore future reports are to be provided no later than the June Commission meetings. As reported by the department, it is exceeding the approved benchmarks for all classes of pavement, culverts, and traffic management systems. However, the department did not achieve the 2018 benchmark for bridge health, and future target conditions are not likely to be met without corrective action. Staff recommends a reevaluation of targets established for this asset class. Additionally, to provide increased accountability for bridge assets, Commission staff recommends the following. Number 1, beginning with the January 2020 Commission meeting, construction allocations for projects that include bridge improvements in the scope of work must provide the existing overall condition of the bridge at programming and what the projected overall condition of the bridge would be at construction completion. And 2, beginning with the 2020 SHOP, projects that include bridge improvements in the scope of work must provide the existing overall condition of the bridge at time of programming and the projected overall condition of the bridge at construction completion. Progress on 2 SB1 2027 targets are outstanding. Fix an additional 500 bridges and the achieve not less than 90% level of service for the maintenance of potholes, spalls, and cracks. Book item number 21 addresses the fixed bridges. And for the pavement level of service target, staff recommends that the department provide the criteria and their progress no later than the March 2020 Commission meeting. Staff recommends approval of the findings and recommendations included in this report.
We have a motion by Commissioner Tavaloni, a second by Commissioner Alvarado. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Abstaining? That motion carries. Okay, we'll go on now to item 23.
Commissioners, item 23 is an information item. This item is an update to the draft 2020 Interregional Transportation Improvement Program. The draft 2020 ITIP released in October proposed the following. Fund cost increases to 3 projects, 3 in the construction phase and 1 in the right-of-way phase. Delete the Raymer to Burnson double track project and program these funds to the Link Union Station project in Los Angeles County. Delete 3 projects that were programmed for pre-construction phases in Madera, Tulare, and San Luis Obispo counties. Remove funding from the construction component of the Tulare State Route 99 Tegas Highway project as a result of savings. Remove $20 million from the construction component of the Tulare State Route 99 Tegas Highway project, and the $20 million would have been replaced with the State Route 99 bond funds. And retain $61.331 million in uncommitted funds to be held in reserve for priority rail projects and other priorities. We have held 3 hearings to date, the first in Modesto on October 8th, the second one in Irvine on October 15th, and the third in Fresno on November 15th. There was a great number of testimony in all 3 hearings, and the Commission received many letters expressing concerns with this proposal. Letters received since the last hearing have been included in your package. Bruce DeTerra, Division Chief for Programming, is here to give us an update on the draft 2020 ITIP.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for having me present again. And this time, I think you'll be much more pleased, as will the audience members, about what I'll be speaking of. So if I could go to the slides. Thank you very much. So I'll try to skip through the beginning. Thank you. You did my introductory slide, so we'll move ahead. So I'll get to the particulars of how we've been revising the ITIP based on the input we've received thus far from the public and the hearings, and then also substantial written comments. And I believe we also received additional written comments that the Commission may not have received, and we will be responding to that within the final ITIP that we'll submit to the Commission probably on December 16th, since I don't think Teresa is going to be in the office on December 15th, which is a Sunday, to receive it. So we'll be submitting the final.
She might be.
Then. She might, I hope not. To summarize, we had initially within the document proposed deprogramming $2 million in PA&D on Tulare 99. We are withdrawing that proposal to deprogram. That we will continue with the proposed programming as was in the 2018 for that phase. For the PS&E phases for highways 46 and 99, the three projects there, we had proposed to deprogram those in their entirety for the PS&E phase. And for those who don't know PS&E, it's plans, specifications, and estimates, and that is the design phase for the project. So we are counter-proposing now that we would have $21,004,000 in ITIP funding for those projects to be split among them, which I will go into the details of that. We are eliminating the request to redirect the $20 million in Proposition 1B Highway 99 bond funds. We are no longer proposing to do that, to pull that out to move it off to another project, but we are proposing to use some of that funding for two of the Highway 99 projects to cover a funding gap between the ITIP and the full project cost. We are also proposing to deprogram some funding from two rail projects that would generate $34 million in funding capacity to utilize for new projects that we'll identify. At the end of this, there will be no unproposed projects. There'll be none of that reserve fund without projects attached to it. And all three of the projects that we previously proposed, excepting two phases of one project, will be fully funded, and I'll go into the details. So for the Highway 99 projects, Tulare City, I mentioned the PA&ED of the $2 million. For the PS&E phase, we are looking to split that with $4,300,000 in ITIP funding, and then $2,070,000 in Proposition 1B 99 bond funding. This has been discussed with the regional agencies. We had, after the Fresno hearing, the agencies got together, Caltrans and CalSTA. We've met with those agencies. We've come to this, and this was part of their proposal that they submitted to us as to how to fund the projects with the $21,004,000 that we had proposed to use among the three projects. So this is a proposal that's been agreed upon by the regional agencies and the state on that. For Madera 99, we're looking at $6,400,000 in ITIP funding for the PS&E phase, and then the balance of the projects funding would come from Highway 99 bond savings. So that PS&E phase would be restored to full funding with that. For the Antelope grade, we are proposing to fund the PS&E phase entirely with ITIP funding. They do not have a Highway 99 bond program, and they have no available RTIP for that phase. So they've already completed the what's commonly known as environmental, but PA and ED phase. So PS&E is the next one. We are continuing with the proposal to deprogram the right-of-way and right-of-way support phases with ITIP funding, because those phases are not yet ready in terms of going forward because we don't have the design finalized yet. And there are aspects of the design that may change what our right-of-way requirements are. Therefore, postponing it to the 2022 cycle or some other funding source is a prudent and a reasonable thing to do. So that money will be, approximately $5 million would then be redirected to other projects that I'll address shortly. And I, of course, will be happy to take any questions on this when we're done, but I'm trying to kind of catch us up a little bit on the schedule here. As Teresa mentioned, for the rail projects, we had proposed to move deprogram one project, Raymer-Burnson in Los Angeles, and transfer that entire amount of funding to a new project, the Link Union Station project for that dollar amount, and we're still proposing to do that as originally proposed. Same dollar amount in the same two projects. For the rail projects, this is where the big capacity is coming from. On this, we're proposing to deprogram $13 million from the mini-high platform projects that was in the 2018 ITIP. And the reason for that is that we've changed the strategy for the project. We are no longer going to be constructing concrete access ramp for the mini-high platforms, and these are to access the new train design so that we can have the ADA compliant access. We are going to be constructing them out of metal so that they are less expensive to construct, and they also then become movable, so they can be used in other locations as the particular needs of stations change. We would be able to move those platforms. So this is a savings that we would redirect within the ITIP within this cycle to new projects that I will address in a moment. And then, as was recommended during one of the hearings, it was recommended that the second platform station, and this is in the Stockton area, be canceled because it was no longer needed due to the morning service on the San Joaquin route not moving forward any longer. And we concur with that assessment that second platform is not needed as originally proposed, but there are other improvements that are still being made. But in addressing that issue, it frees up $21 million in capacity for redirection to other projects. Oh, it would have really helped if I'd done the slide. You can give me that clue. Gotta remember to do my thumb. So here are the new projects that we would propose to be submitting within the ITIP, and we'll have all the programming details with the corresponding PIDs with these projects when we submit the final document. As was referenced earlier, the Class 1 railroads are very important, and they are something that we paid attention to with the ITIP. And the ITIP focuses on passenger rail. And in the Stockton area, passenger rail and freight rail share the same tracks. There's not an independently publicly owned rail line servicing the San Joaquins. So there's an at-grade crossing of the Union Pacific and the BNSF railroad tracks right adjacent to the Port of Stockton. So one train passes and the other sits and waits, and then they take turns, just like we had at Colton Crossing that was resolved with the TCIF program. This is similar, not quite to the same scale, but this needs to be taken care of, and we're proposing to contribute $25,800,000 towards that project to do that grade separation. That will serve both the San Joaquins in there, and then I believe, if I can get a nod from Kyle, that it also serves the Altamont, and it serves the Altamont Commuter Express service as well. And then we're also proposing for the Altamont Computer Express maintenance facility to contribute to the expansion of it so that the San Joaquin trains can be serviced at that location. So that's a more efficient approach to address the needs for the maintenance of that facility than creating a whole separate one. So we're proposing to do that. And then, as mentioned at the last meeting, when I mentioned that we were looking to invest in positive train control and the coast subdivision. And the coast subdivision is what would be it's informally referred to the Coast Daylight Service that we're looking at between San Luis Obispo and the Bay Area. Developing that service, this would establish the positive train control that's necessary for that service. So between San Luis Obispo and Gilroy, and then between Newark and Oakland, that we would be contributing funding to that, to move that forward. And this proposed programming would utilize the $52,300,000 that's made available from savings of TAGUS This was a Highway 99 project that was funded with ITIP money that had savings from the implementation of the earlier phase. And so that money is actually free within the ITIP for other uses. That was approximately $8 million. For the two right-of-way phases on the Antelope 46, that was approximately $5 million. We take that funding. We take the other savings here from these rail projects, and we come to $52 million. And I believe it's 330,000, so I actually misspoke. We do have 30,000 that hasn't yet been fully accounted for, but I believe we'll figure that out by the time we generate the final. And with this, the proposal that we initially had that deprogrammed the PS&E phases for 3 very important projects, and we recognize that, and Secretary Kim emphasized the state's commitment to that. That has been resolved in cooperation with the partner agencies, and also that we're bringing in the important rail projects that have been mentioned by earlier speakers of the need to support a mode shift, and fortunately, it's benefiting passenger rail and freight rail at the same time. So we have co-benefits. And by the reduction of the idling trains, we're benefiting the communities by eliminating standing idling locomotives within the Stockton community, which also already has plenty of emissions from the freight industry as it is. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions that you may have, or to move along so that we can get to more items, whatever your pleasure.
Questions? No? We're good.
Okay, thank you very much.
Except stand by, because I do have 2 speakers, so
Oh,
some questions may come forward from that. Esther, followed by Linda.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm more prepared right now. I was a little caught off guard with Vincent's comment, so I'm going to be take a little bit more time than my usual brief comments, and hopefully you'll entertain that, and I'll stay within my time. I want to thank Bruce and Teresa for the presentation on the ITIP. We want to appreciate the initial attempt to align our transportation investments with our state goals. We were really encouraged to see the initial draft of the ITIP, and are slightly disheartened to see some of the changes, and I'll talk a bit about why. I think, we need to ensure that there are actual viable transportation choices for people to get away from this siloed thinking of cars as the only way to get around. It's always going to be a way to get around, but it's not the only way. I appreciate Secretary Kim's comment about visiting the roadways, particularly the 99. You all know that I live and breathe the Central Valley, so I know the 99 very well. I've driven it most of my adult life, which you may not believe, but I'm quite a bit old enough to have known that road quite well. And I think particularly in Tulare and Madera, expansion throughout the 99 is not the solution. We need to think about providing actual options to people who live in the valley and in other parts. I know this very personally. I work throughout the state, so I follow you guys around, as you know. I go to Bakersfield to support some of our partners who are there. When I drive, it takes 3.5 hours on a good day. When I take rail, sometimes it takes 5.5 to 6 hours. That's not a viable choice for someone in the valley to get around. We are forcing people to get in a car. So we need to think about the investments we're making and how we're prioritizing funding for transportation. Similarly to that, as I mentioned, working throughout the state, when I have to go to the Bay Area, I can't take a train, I have to drive. In the valley, that means getting up at 5 a.m. to get to a meeting by 9. That's not an option. That's not a choice that we're actually providing people in the valley. I think I want to urge you to continue to find ways that align our transportation funding and investments with our state goals. We need to look at holistic ways to address the needs of the people who live in this state. We need to think through what are actual options and what are viable options for those people and how they're able to get around. Like I mentioned, being in a car is always going to be an option, but it shouldn't be the only one. There are people who would like to use other options, but they're not viable if it's going to take close to twice as long to get there using using that method. So I urge you to continue to find ways to align transportation funding with our investments in transportation and our state goals. And the last comment I want to make is that you did receive quite a bit of concerns around some of the changes that were happening with the draft ITIP, but there were also some support, including a letter from ourselves and our partners that's included in your packet. And I believe there was another one at the Fresno meeting as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, Linda?
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Chair Fran Inman, and Secretary Kim, and Director Omi Shakin. And I'd love for us all to practice your last name, because I know as myself, I have a difficult last name as well, and so that we can be able to address you as Director Omi Shakin. Is that right? Okay. My colleague Esther, who is an expert in the Valley, spoke to this more directly, but what I wanted to just reiterate is that our coalition of 16 organizations also submitted a letter that's in your package and is in support of the state looking, and particularly the programs that we have that fund intercity rail and transportation, to look at how we can meet our state climate goals, and as a priority for how we put forward the needs of people to get, and as we know, people are being pushed further and further out away from job centers. So how do we make sure that they're not spending their entire day or 16 hours going back and forth between their jobs and losing out on that quality of life that we've been speaking to today. And so I wanted to just point that out, that it's encouraging that there is more emphasis on rail. We know that you have had a lot of concern brought forward to you, and we appreciate you addressing and taking the time to visit those areas, but there's a lot of other needs, and it's so important that in the conditions that we are right now, to look at all the ways that we can continue to push forward shovel-ready projects instead of what my understanding is the expansion projects are just going into the design phase now. So that's still down the line, whereas we have priorities that can get us those those transit numbers that we want to see, people using those options more. So it does take that investment, and it takes that, I encourage you to be looking at what are our performance measures to be able to really get to those VMT reductions that we're looking for. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? I have just one. Bruce, when will this draft be available?
What we'll be submitting on December 16th will be the final ITIP that we'd submit to you as part of the STIP consideration. We have the same schedule that the regional agencies do for the RTIPs.
Okay, so your summary of the changes are not in...
Correct.
We're reading yet. Okay.
Yeah, this document, we're presenting this first, and then we're in the process of changing this and editing it and clarifying things, updating the whole kit and caboodle based on comments. And we'll have a section that addresses comments. I would like to point out that in the ITIP, the 2020 proposed ITIP is 30% passenger rail funding out of the $625 million of the entirety of the program. So that is more than double what is actually required in statute for the ITIP.
Okay. Director Branson, did you want to say something?
Commissioners, just as far as process, so we'll receive the final ITIP by December 15th or on or before, and the RTIPs, and then the commission will hold 2 hearings, North and South, in January. Commission will, publish their staff recommendations well in advance of the commission taking action on the entire STIP, which that will occur where you would be requested to take action on the STIP that would include the ITIP and the RTIP staff recommendations for programming at the March meeting.
Correct. That is correct. Yes, and I do look forward to your final ITIP and looking at your new projects, making sure they have a PSR and are fully funded.
Do we have the hearing dates so we can give people enough notice?
Yes, we're going to have the North hearing is going to be January 30th, and the Southern hearing, I believe, is February 6th. Mm-hmm. And we will be, in the next couple of weeks, we will be sending out at the location. That way, everybody knows where
Okay.
it will be at and the time.
Okay, thank you. No further questions. Okay, we're going to move on to the next item then, which is number 24. Teresa,
Okay.
you're up again.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioners, item 24 is an information item. This item is a Southern hearing to take public comment on the draft guidelines for the 2020 Solutions for Congested Corridors program. The Solutions for Congested Corridors program receives an annual appropriation of $250 million to fund projects that make specific improvements and are part of a comprehensive corridor plan. The projects are designed to reduce congestion in highly traveled and highly congested corridors through performance improvements that balance transportation, community, and environmental impact benefits. Statute requires that prior to adoption of the guidelines, the Commission hold at least 2 public hearings, one in Northern California and the other in Southern California. Statute further requires that 30 days prior to the adoption of the guidelines, a copy of the guidelines be transmitted to the Joint Legislative Budget Committee and the Senate and Assembly Transportation Committees. Since the initial kickoff in June 2019, we've held 5 public workshops to solicit input to inform the guidelines. We will hold one more workshop on December 13th in Sacramento. The draft guidelines included as an attachment in your package describe the policy, standards, criteria, and procedures for the development and management of the program. The draft guidelines address legislative requirements, incorporate input received from various stakeholders, and include Commission's procedures for programming and delivery. I will briefly highlight key sections of the guidelines that we proposed change from the 2018 program. First, this 2020 program will add 2 years of funding in fiscal years 21-22 and 22-23. Projects must have completed the environmental process to be considered for funding. An exception may be made for smaller projects or smaller project modes that are part of a larger project. For these, they must complete the environmental process within 6 months of adoption. Although there is no geographic balance requirement, it is the intent of this program to fund multiple projects throughout the state, with at least one project in a county with a population of 500,000 or less. These projects must be consistent with sections 15 and 16 of the guidelines. The Commission encourages projects that align with the state climate goals and that manage congestion through innovative strategies and encourage multimodal solutions. Also, to the extent beneficial, cost-effective, and practicable, all nominations should incorporate complete street elements. We also clarify language in the guidelines to address general purpose lanes, segmenting of projects, and projects with multiple modes. We also added in the guidelines that priority will be given to segments that complete the corridor as defined in the corridor plan. The efficient land use criteria has been expanded to include that an application may identify local land use policies that are in place or are under development in the project area that supports efficient land use. These are all the sections I would like to highlight. All other sections of the guidelines have either minimal changes or no changes at all. Chair, this concludes my remarks, and unless you have specific questions for me, staff recommends the chair open the Southern California hearing for public comment.
Yes, Commissioner Norton.
In our packet is a letter from Metro, LA Metro,
Yes.
of comments about the congestion corridor program guidelines, and I wanted to know what you thought of their suggestions.
Yes, so Metro proposes for the environmental to, right now, the guidelines, we're proposing the guidelines to have the environmental complete, and unless it's a smaller project, and Metro is proposing for us to extend this to all projects. We think that with these projects, they are very, very large projects, and the risks is higher when the environmental is not complete. Given the uncertainty as well for the safe rule, I think it's more prudent for us to have ready-to-go projects. That way we eliminate a lot of the risks, and we have a lot of projects that are very shovel-ready at the moment. So I've talked to Metro already. We talked about it at many of our workshops, and that's really what we have in the guidelines. That's what we came up with.
Okay, and I also wanted you to see the geographic equity provisions and wanted to find out what you think of that.
And I agree with Metro, and I am adding that section in the guidelines, which is what I said verbally, that as long as the projects are consistent with the evaluation criteria and the screening criteria, all projects must meet all those requirements in order for us to consider for funding. We want to fund the best projects that we get. So yes, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I have two speakers on this, Patricia Chen, speaking of Metro, and Sarkis.
Thank you. I'm Patricia Chen. Good afternoon, Commissioners. And I did pull a card to speak on the item, but I was very pleased that staff made a change to what they were recommending. And I just want to say that we really appreciate the staff's flexibility. Really did a wonderful job on the performance metrics, and particularly getting in some of the information that makes it easier to tout the multimodal projects, and kept a lot of the really good, strong evaluation criteria that is going to make for the truly transformational projects that move the needle and make a significant improvement. So thank you very much, staff, and we're very largely supportive of the guidelines.
Thank you. Sarkis?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Sarkis Kalchuk with SBCAG. First of all, thank you to Ms. Teresa Favila for a very transparent and collaborative process with development of the guidelines. We appreciate that. This is a really important program, not just for large regions, but also for small urban and rural regions. It allows us to deliver transformative and multimodal solutions to reduce and relieve congestion. We're here to support the draft guidelines today, and we're especially supportive of the two items that Ms. Favila mentioned about the intent to fund at least one project in a county less than 500,000 population, and the other comment about priority for funding to complete corridors. This will allow the state to really see the true benefit of completing these multimodal corridors. So with that, thank you again, and we appreciate the support from the Commission.
Okay, this was an information. Yes, Commissioner von Konynenberg.
Thank you, Teresa, for all your work. I'd like to go to section 16 and in particular section 16.3. I think it's really important to leverage federal discretionary funding. We've done that on other programs, including trade quarter programs. And so I'd like to add, I'd like to suggest that we add the following sentence to section 16.3, which would say priority will be given to projects that have committed discretionary federal funds, period. The commitment should be in the form of a letter or a public announcement issued by the authorizing federal agency. I think it leaves it generic enough, since we do have a new transportation bill that we hope will be adopted soon, and we don't know what the term, they always come up with a new acronym because everyone's got to have a new acronym for their, and so we don't know what the name of it will be, but it allows us to make sure we're leveraging federal discretionary funds to get projects done in California.
Will do, Vice Chair.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that was information. Now we move
Yes.
to the...
And just,
yes.
that concludes the southern hearing, and so our northern hearing will be in Sacramento on January 30th.
Okay, and Mitch, did you want to add something?
Yes, I just want to add my voice to the chorus, thanking Teresa for her work in this program. This is the second cycle in a row she's had to take this program on in addition to her other job because the commission is short-staffed. So I appreciate the work that she's done.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay. Count it all joy, Teresa. Okay, so now we're going to move to item 25.
Commissioners, item 25 is an action item. Staff recommends that the commission approve submittal of the draft 2020 Solutions for Congested Corridors Program guidelines to the required legislative committees, noting any specific changes and delegating to the executive director the authority to make any necessary modifications. Staff recommends.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Von Kanienberg, a second by Commissioner Burke. Is there discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. We'll go now to item 26. Terry.
Commissioners, item number 26 is an informational item. SB1 amended Streets and Highways Code to include a requirement that the department implement efficiency measures with the goal to generate at least $100 million per year in savings to invest in maintenance and rehabilitation of the state highway system. Nabila Abi Rashid is here to provide a presentation on the department's annual efficiencies report.
Good afternoon. Okay, there it is. Good afternoon, Chair Inman and Commissioners. My name is Nabila Abirashid, and I'm the Acting SB1 Program Manager for Caltrans. I have the pleasure of providing you with a follow-up presentation on Caltrans Senate Bill 1 Annual Efficiencies Report for 2018-19 fiscal year. This is the second annual report presented to the Commission. Senate Bill 1 requires the department to implement efficiency measures with the goal to generate at least $100 million per year in savings to reinvest in maintenance and rehabilitation of the state highway system. Senate Bill 1 requires these savings to be reported to the Commission. For the 2018-19 year, Caltrans' goal was to generate at least $200 million, more than double the statutory goal. The 2018-19 report identified $233 million in savings. The efficiencies outlined in this report were developed by various programs and approved through Caltrans Financial Policy Board. Each program is responsible for developing the proposed measures, the methodology, and calculations. In addition, how it will be monitored and measured throughout the year. For the 2018-19 report, the efficiencies were categorized as innovative tools, new technology, and process improvements. Speaking at some of Director Almashakin's points, we did not just carry over last year's efficiencies, but we worked internally to really drive a culture that's looking for new ways to be efficient and innovative. We just weren't maintaining status quo. 9 new efficiencies were presented in this report. 4 measures were identified that were categorized under innovative tools. 3 of these measures are new for the 2018-19 year. Acceleration of work, innovative strategies in striping contracts, and advanced mitigation. Some of the feedback provided on the 2017-18 report was to look for opportunities to expand future year savings by leveraging existing measures. CMGC was one of the efficiencies presented last year. CMGC allows Caltrans to engage the contractor during the design phase to provide constructability reviews. The goal is finding more efficient methods and material and to construct faster at lower costs. Caltrans was allowed by Senate Bill 1262 on September 17, 2018, to increase its usage of CMGC, which in turn expands our potential opportunities for savings on projects. We expect to see more savings as a result of Senate Bill 1262 in the 2019-20 fiscal year. The report also identified 5 efficiencies that fall under the category of new technology. It is recognized that technology in itself has a cost. This was taken into consideration and subtracted from the savings. 4 of the 5 are new efficiency measures in the 2018-19 report, and they're highlighted on the slide. 3 of the 4 new efficiencies, high reflective material for striping, mobile field devices, and high-performance reflective signs, were identified in the 2017 report as future years. And for this report, we've been able to document and measure the savings. Highway lighting LED retrofit project will stay within the maintenance and operations, and the remaining new technology measures will be reinvested in the maintenance and rehabilitation of our state highway system. We have been working really hard on process improvements in many areas of the department. It improves productivity and reduces project delivery costs. This includes utilizing the Lean Six Sigma process to streamline and pinpoint waste and efficiencies. We've identified 4 measures, of which 2 are new efficiencies for the 2018-19 report, also highlighted on this slide. As I stated earlier, we need to be innovative and think outside the box. Part of this is looking at existing processes. Are there ways to further streamline and generate savings? Value analysis process is an existing tool that we reviewed. Value analysis takes independent subject matters and reviews ways to improve the performance of a project and reduces costs. The threshold to perform value analysis of a project is $50 million or greater in total project costs, which is a federal mandate. Because of the tremendous opportunity in value analysis and the savings that can be achieved, Caltrans lowered the threshold to perform value analysis on projects down to $25 million or greater. We expect to see additional savings in future years. Streamlining the environmental review NEPA assignment is another area where we have formed teams to evaluate existing processes. The teams are looking at developing strategies to further streamline. Lean Six Sigma is a data-driven approach through a 5-step process. These projects are in various stages and have the potential for saving through significant reductions in processing time and costs. Though these Lean Six projects do not necessarily get reinvested back into the maintenance and rehabilitation of the state highway system, we wanted to show at the very minimum we are reviewing process improvements and driving innovation by championing this proven approach. The Inspector General issued their final report on the 2017-18 SB1 Annual Efficiencies Report in July 2019. The Inspector General reviewed almost 90% of the reported $133 million in efficiencies. It was approximately about $119.5 million, and found that what was overreported was about $8.7 million, resulting in $123 million in savings and still achieving our goal. The majority of recommendations provided in the audit report have been implemented in this 2018-19 report. Some recommendations require additional time, such as developing guidance and educating staff, and will be implemented in this current year, the 19-20. We are expecting that all our new efficiencies that were presented in the report that you are seeing to be audited for methodology and whether the savings are reported and well documented. That concludes my presentation. Is there any questions for me?
Do we have questions? Commissioner Dunn.
Thank you for this. Thank you very much, and thank you for the efficiencies. I want to be thoughtful about some of the things that I'm going to ask and careful too, because a lot of us in our day jobs up here and a lot of the folks out there worked really hard to get support SB1 and then to protect it on the ballot when it went up for repeal. And that $100 million was a big deal for us in the private sector to be able to argue. Fast forward now today, there's a lot of polling out there, both public and private polling. The public is really ticked off about this, ticked off about the gas taxes increases, et cetera. And so it makes it even doubly important for us to make sure that these efficiencies are real. And so there's some in there, notwithstanding the Inspector General's report from last year. There are process improvements that I wonder, are they really new? Some of them are. New technology, totally get. But I'm looking at some of the old ones to say, can we make sure that these are real? Because we now, as certainly in the private sector as well, in addition to the commission, we want to defend this for you. And I'm not sure we can always explain this to the public in a way that's understandable. So I'm challenging my friends at Caltrans to make this real, and to and our Inspector General to make this real. A NEPA delegation that's been on the books for years, I'm not quite sure that that really constitutes, I mean, you still exceed, right? Even if that were taken out, I get it. But could you help us with that a little bit more? And also put it in ways where we can now certainly share it with the public in a way to give them confidence that what we promised is in fact being delivered. $100 million should be really hard for you to achieve. Not, it looks like it was easy, right? To me, it looks like it was easy. It should be really hard. We really stretched, we really tried, and we got to 101. Do you see what I'm saying?
I understood. And so to your point, a lot of the process improvements, they are new projects. We are looking to streamline even more because there's always opportunities to be innovative and be more efficient than what we are. But we will certainly, for future years, engage with the Inspector General, confirm the validity of the efficiencies, and
give us some good examples of where this worked and why you chose to do this now versus in the past. We did it the old way, but now we've been challenged to do it a new way. Again, give us the tools.
Tell our story.
To tell the story well.
Understood.
Please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Paul.
Thank you, Nabila, for this report. And you're much better than that Jim Davis guy who gave it.
I'll let my boss know that.
She's a star. Continuous improvement year over year is really hard. Ask anyone who's a supplier to the auto industry who has to do continuous improvement every year. It's really difficult. So I just want to affirm that the legislature, when they said you have to find $100 million a year, that gave you a really tall task. I just want to ask a few questions so that I can get my arms around it. So on accelerated work, you show about $64 million of savings in accelerated work. So the logic goes that because work was accelerated, we saved money. But if you only look at projects that were accelerated and don't net out projects that were delayed or deleted, do you get a true picture of it?
We focus, so we have over 200 projects. There's going to be pluses and minuses throughout. And what we really focused on is really looking at it from a programmatic perspective. In the end, we have $1.5 billion that we're able to apply to projects programmatically. So there is a time effect on money in being able to save and put projects out quicker.
Totally agree with that.
So
just maybe for the next year's report, you can provide a list of the projects that were accelerated and also the list of the projects that were delayed or deleted, so we can see a net of that. Second one is on the striping contracts, and the striping, which totally understand this. The only caveat I have is that I know we've had several striping projects that have come in for supplementals, and in some cases we've all just held off because we couldn't find the people to do the work. And so again, I'm kind of struggling as to how those are netted out in terms of on the striping. And maybe it's just because in District 10 we had a real problem finding people to do the projects up in the mountains, and I'm sensitive to that.
So we've been looking, there were 28 projects. We worked with the contractors, gained their input. We worked out, because we were putting out contracts at the same time, which meant that they had to build their bid accordingly. And so this allows for what, based off of input, we were able to increase the working days, have moving lane closures, increase the work hours, which really allowed some flexibility. So,
Because in project delivery meetings we've had, we've been we've been talking about how the bidding environment's been going up and up and up, and especially on some of these. And so that's why I was like, okay, how does that work?
And we can always give you a better answer and work with staff on getting you a more detailed answer.
Okay. Everything else, I think I understood. So it was those that or they were so minor, it's not really worth talking about. So thank you.
Great. Thank you.
I have just one thing. On the reflective signs, I know we tried to quantify the savings, the energy cost savings and stuff, but where we have, we've extended the useful life, I'm not sure we captured all of the savings of the fact that we're not having to go out there 4 times, that this is lasting longer. So I'm not sure. I think we may have shorted ourselves a little bit, because if we don't have to send a staff out to do the work because the useful life is longer, there's net savings with that. And then I don't know if you can quantify it, but from the work of 1282, one of the things that came out was our improvement in applications going over to resources. And to me, that just rolls into savings ultimately, because things aren't delayed and people aren't touching a paper 20 times. How you can quantify that, or if you can quantify it. But I think to the extent that we are all making sure that we're sending in complete documents on those, there has to be some way that we can take some credit for that, because I think that's kind of what, the people are very impatient with us. They can't understand why any of us take so long getting through a hearing. But I think, to quantify some of those things, I think will help us, to Commissioner Dunn's point.
Yeah, we have a huge laundry list of efficiencies that are ideas, and so this is one of them. And so we haven't lost sight of it.
Well, we did that already, though, because we learned in that we've gone from, 40% complete to 90% or something? That's
correct.
A huge gain.
I'll take that back and look at how to document methodology.
Okay. And I think the same thing with the light bulbs. If you're not, the use of life is extended, you're not having to send manpower out there to do those installations. And then to the extent, there's some savings also with the reflective, because the wire is a perennial problem with being stolen for all of us. And I know that's a big challenge in District 7 in terms of our lights are out because the connectivity is gone.
We've talked about all the ancillary benefits of a lot of these.
Yeah. Okay. We're good. I'm getting an eyeball here. We're good. Okay, thank you very much. We are now going to move on to the Inspector General's report. Zeelan, 27.
Yes, Commissioners, this is an information item. Senate Bill 1 requires the Inspector General to report a summary of investigations, audit findings, and recommendations, at least annually, to the Governor, the Legislature, and the Commission. The Transportation Inspector General, Wanda Craft, is here to present her report.
Chair Inman,
welcome.
Commissioners, and Director Branson, I'm going to miss you. But I am so happy for you in this next phase in your life. But I'm with Chair Inman. I'm not saying bye yet. Secretary Kim, Director Omashakin. I want to thank you all for the opportunity to present our second annual summary of findings and recommendations, the report of the Inspector General. Before I go any further, I want to acknowledge the hard work and dedication of my staff, two of whom are with me today. The newest member of my staff is Chief Deputy Inspector General Diana Antony, and Deputy Inspector General Debbie Lumpkin of Diversity. And also, I think it's warranted before I move into my report, is to thank CalSTA Secretary Kim, the Caltrans Directorate and staff for being transparent and allowing my office to perform its duties completely independently and without interference. Most importantly, your efforts to implement and respond to our recommendations timely. The annual summary of findings and recommendations highlights the activities of the Independent Office of Audits and Investigations for the period of July 1st, 2018 through June 30th, 2019. New in this reporting cycle is a list of the recommendations and the status of each of those recommendations that were issued to Caltrans during this cycle, as well as a glossary of terms and a list of acronyms to assist the public in understanding common terms and phrases. Last, I'll close with a look ahead and next steps for my vision for the future. Beginning with investigations, the Independent Office of Audits and Investigations conducts independent administrative investigations of alleged employee misconduct. Investigations can result from complaints received from the ethics hotline, audit findings, Caltrans employees, and members of the public. We also assist external entities such as the state auditor, who administers the state's whistleblower hotline, and law enforcement agencies with investigations involving Caltrans employees and external entities who do business with Caltrans. You'll see in the slide that for this reporting period, we received 104 complaints of misconduct. We conducted 15 formal investigations, 11 of which were substantiated. The majority of the substantiated cases fall into the category of incompatible activities and conflict of interest, usually because of business relationships between Caltrans employees and external entities that we do business with, as well as secondary employment by Caltrans employees, followed by misuse of state resources, specifically the computer, falsification of documents, which sometimes involves things like travel expenditures and that kind of thing. Neglect of duty and misuse of the state vehicle. Substantiated cases are referred to the Office of Discipline Services and the management team to determine the appropriate level of discipline. Discipline could include oral reprimand, written warnings, suspension, or termination. Moving to our ethics program, the Ethics Hotline is a phone and internet-based multilingual service for Caltrans employees and the public to report allegations of fraud, waste, and abuse, employee misconduct, and other ethics policy violations. Additionally, the Ask Ethics phone number and email address are available for Caltrans employees to seek guidance and ask questions about situations and/or issues in the workplace that raise ethical concerns. We received 152 new complaints this reporting cycle, 17 of which were substantiated. The most common, once again, incompatible activities and conflict of interest, followed by harassment, which includes retaliation and workplace violence, misuse of state resources, including equipment, time reporting, disruptive behavior, including discourteous and unfair treatment, hiring practices, health and safety, including drugs and alcohol. Turning to our diversity and small business development, the Diversity Accountability Program with the IOAI was established to develop a compliance framework for Caltrans's racial equity efforts in contracting and hiring under the direction of the Inspector General. The Deputy Inspector General of Diversity is responsible for the Diversity Accountability Program and serves as a resource to Caltrans. The vision of this program is to establish a dynamic, sustainable compliance process that has lasting impacts on performance and values collaboration, inclusion, fairness, and transparency. Our accomplishments include the annual observation report, the development of relationships within the small business environment and key community and interested stakeholders, as well as related state and federal entities. Some of the key focus areas that we are looking at that we think will help us to advance the SB 103 priorities include outreach, partnerships, supplier development, disparity studies, program fraud, and discrimination prevention. Communication strategies. In addition to the annual report that SB 1 requires the Inspector General's office to do, we are also required to meet frequently and report often to the Secretary of CalSTA, the Director, Chief Deputy Director of Caltrans on a regular and ongoing basis. And we have been doing that since I've been in office. Our communication framework also includes having representatives from the CTC Commission and staff, federal agencies, members and staff of the legislature, and local agencies and other external entities. And although some of these strategies have not been fully formalized, we have been reaching out to many of these entities to introduce ourselves and to determine interest in working with us. For example, we regularly participate on the Caltrans Small Business Council. In addition, I have met with the Southern California Association of Governments, and I have, through the introduction of Commissioner Dunn, been able to meet representatives from Skanska and the Southern California Partnerships for Jobs. And I'm very excited about the fact that it was a very productive meeting. My intent would be to meet with each of you so that we can identify organizations within your districts who would be helpful to us in the future. In addition to those tasks, the Deputy Inspector General meets with industry folks, including LA Metro and others, and associations that represent diverse supplier and construction industry folks. In fact, we are preparing for an equity task force kickoff meeting that will occur in January. We fully intend or expect to have the framework for meeting with other groups shortly after this meeting. Turning to the audits for fiscal year 2018-19, we completed 70 audits, 6 program, 28 local agency, 20 construction contracts, 16 Prop 1B projects. Some examples of internal contracts include construction contract management audit, travel expenditure audit, audit of the enterprise risk management program, as well as an efficiency measures audit. This particular audit was reported on last reporting cycle, but we thought it was important to resurrect it again because it actually was not concluded until this fiscal year. And it gives me an opportunity to emphasize that Caltrans programs are proactive in identifying efficiencies and develop processes and procedures for meeting SB 1 efficiency requirements. It's also an opportunity to reiterate our commitment to you and the public to continue to audit or conduct additional audits at various stages of SB 1 implementation. And in fact, there's another one coming up soon. I think the other thing on this slide that is definitely worth mentioning is the fact that we, in looking at our construction contracts, we identified a little over $208,000 in disallowed costs and a little over $3 million in avoided costs. Turning to Prop 1B, we identified more than $7.5 million in disallowed costs. Local agencies. The stewardship and oversight agreement between the FHWA and Caltrans requires Caltrans to assess accounting controls of local agencies through various monitoring activities, some prescribed by Caltrans' Local Assistance Manual. The IOAI monitored these activities through indirect cost allocation plan, indirect cost rate proposals, as well as incurred costs. And in these activities, we were able to identify a little over $3 million in disallowed costs as a result of looking at the indirect cost allocation plan and indirect cost rate proposal, as well as about $3 million in disallowed costs from incurred costs. Financial documents review. This is a service that the Independent Office of Audits and Investigations does for Caltrans. We review financial documents from A&E consultants to determine if the indirect cost rate and direct costs proposed are supported, reasonable, and in compliance with cost principles and administrative requirements set forth by federal regulations. We were able to identify $15.6 million in avoided costs in contracts between Caltrans and A&E consultants, as well as $8.2 million in avoided costs between local agencies and A&E consultants for a total of very nearly $24 million. This is the list of audit recommendations and their status. We issued a total of 208 recommendations for this reporting period. We have actually closed 66 of those recommendations. 142 of them remain open. The audit work conducted by our office identified over $3 million in disallowed costs and over $27 million in avoided costs. To date, Caltrans has recovered over $1.3 million in disallowed costs and is actively working to recover more funds. We monitor the progress of the recommendations by requiring status updates at regular intervals throughout a one-year period. And then 180 days, every 180 days after 365 until we have been assured that those recommendations have been closed. So looking ahead, the slide here shows you key SB1 audits that are included in our audit plan, which is the 1920 audit plan, and it is available on our website. I'm not going to go through each of them individually, but what I will tell you is that these audits were identified through a risk assessment process and discussions with Caltrans staff, key community stakeholders, and industry partners, and may include information gathered from our ethics program. Likewise with key SB 103 audits. And so rather than spend time with those because they are available in the audit plan, what I'd like to do is share my vision. I've been here 5 months now. I started in July. I'm still enjoying the position as much as I did when I started. It's difficult, but I love it. I also enjoy working with this administration, and I'm so optimistic because of this new administration. And likewise, someone said before, your meetings with this team have been very productive. Same with me. So what I'll do is just share a little bit of my vision moving forward, since I'm the newest kid on the block here. And one of the things that I'm looking to do as a priority is to adopt the principles and standards for offices of Inspector General recommended by the Association of Inspector General, which focuses on quality, public accountability and trust, and requires that we follow basic principles of integrity, independence, professionalism, and confidentiality, to name a few. It also requires inspectors general to regard their offices as a public trust and whose primary duty is serving the public interest. Another priority of mine is accurate and timely reporting of our activities. The next would be maximizing the use of our resources. The next one would be technology. We are in the process of looking at technology to enhance the software program we currently use. We need software that has the capability of data analytics, benchmarking for trend analysis and dashboarding, as well as tracking project timeframes and status of recommendations. This will help us to reach our goals and demonstrate the effectiveness of the office. And then lastly, we hope to be working with a consultant real soon so that we can develop our own strategic plan, which will help us to develop the right goals and focus our efforts to meet them. And with that, I'll close and entertain any questions you might have of me.
Okay, thank you, Rhonda. Do we have any questions? Yes, Director Kim.
Rhonda, thank you very
Secretary.
much for your thorough report. And I just really wanted to compliment you and your team on the very strong start. As you said, you've been on the job 5 months, and you're off to an outstanding start. And the role you play, the audit and investigation function, is so critically important to making sure that you hold all of us accountable and that we are conducting business in a legal and ethical way. So thank you for your service. Thank you for your updates, and great to have you on board.
Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Dunn.
Yes, and I too want to offer congratulations and thank you for your report. I found, in addition, the report is eminently readable and understandable, and I think those are just so key when we're in an era, sometimes it's tough to understand government speak. So thank you for that, and we look forward to working with you, really rooting for your great success.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Commissioner
and thank
Burke.
you for your report. You have a very important job and a challenging job. I recognize that. I had one question. I noticed that some of the issues that are raised are 2018, and some are 2019. What is the difference there? Are some of them that have been pending for a long time, and were never completed, and it's a number of them that are still 2018?
Yes, so these should be 18-19. I'm not sure that there are any 17s there.
No, I did see 17.
Okay,
Just
so
18 and
these are
19.
18-19, and so it's an iterative process. It's fluid. For example, in terms of the collection of money, oftentimes Caltrans staff have to go back and have discussions with FHWA, so it's not going to be a one-to-one return. Sometimes recommendations are more complex than others. Sometimes they involve, the entire universe of Caltrans. One of the things that we are doing differently than we did previously, that is making sure that we involve the directorate and all of the programs who might be affected by our recommendations, which means that they may have to develop a memo that goes out to the entire universe, as opposed to previous days where we only dealt with the audit, the area that we were auditing, which I think is going to be of value to Caltrans in terms of how we're doing it today, to be able to address issues.
Well, I believe the Inspector General is a very, very important position, and welcome.
Thank you.
Very pleased to see the kind of work you're undertaking, and you certainly have our support.
Thank you.
Because we think that if there are issues that have to be addressed, they should be addressed. So, good luck.
Thank you, Commissioner Burke. I appreciate it.
Okay, stand by just a little bit, if you will. We have two speakers, and they may have a question. So, Esther and Linda, please.
Our Amtrak Inspector General makes about 250 to 300.
Hello again, lots to say today. Esther Rivera with California Walks. Hello again, commissioners. I'll keep this very brief. So I really appreciate the Inspector General's presentation and really look forward to working with her in this new role. Our organization has a history of working closely in her previous roles, so really excited for her to be on board and working collaboratively. One of the things I just want to call out is a consideration for the last two slides that the Inspector General presented around SB SB1 audits and encouraging looking at the considerations that were required with SB1 spending or funds, which include complete streets, climate considerations, and pavement technology. It'd be great to see how that's coming about with projects, whether or not it's being considered or a part of those projects, and how that's really advancing. So we think that may be something to consider in the audits. That just goes back to how we're being efficient and effective in our transportation spending and how we're being transparent and accountable to what's in SB1. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Linda?
I don't want to hold us any longer, but Linda Commission with the California Bicycle Coalition, just echoing again my colleagues' comments. Thank you for the presentation to the Inspector General. We really do hope for your success and consideration into the key SB1 audits, this ability to look at, within the language of SB1, there is language that shares that we are also, within our transportation dollars, going to be considering complete streets in all aspects of SB1 transportation projects, which doesn't, it's not just limited to specific programs, but looking across the board, because a number of our advocates in the local areas, in San Diego, for example, have been asking, how can we understand the projects that are coming forward to the Commission for approval are actually helping us shift mode share to get people out of cars and have safer places for walking and biking. And so maybe looking at this area as a way to look at how are these projects being considered for complete streets and reaching our climate change goals. So something to consider moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Kehoe.
To your last point, we've been asking that question in San Diego of the city of San Diego and Sandag as they roll out their bike lane program, which is, has not been seamless, let's put it that way. And there really isn't any baseline data yet on mode shift, on just plain old use, and on injuries or accidents. So I don't know how we can help the locals come up with better baseline data so we know, or some starting point, so we know what the changes have been and what we can successfully count on in these programs as we implement our active transportation program. I'd like to get some answers from Caltrans on that when we have a chance.
Do you mean baseline data in terms of mode share?
For starters, yeah.
For starters. So the Travel Household Survey, the American Health, that does give, we know what the mode share is in cities in California. Caltrans has a goal, a target of tripling bicycling, doubling walking, and doubling transit rides by 2020. So about a month away from that. But those are some major goals in terms of what's the right sort of target, if that's what you mean, in terms of where to move.
Yeah, and what's the actual pace of change?
Right, the pace of change. Well, that'll depend on investments, right? Where we prioritize our dollars, our transportation dollars is going to dictate where our mode shift actually goes. And so when we look at, if we're only catering to the status quo, that's just going to produce the same mode share. So we have to really be strategic about, if we want to be efficient in our funds, if you're going in to rip a street open and add a maintenance project there or any kind of new facilities, that is the best time to go and put in the improvements that you need, because you're already covering the cost of all of that work and not having to go back again. And so that's when you're looking at the suite of projects within SB1, it would be good for the public to understand, have these projects considered, all of the different users of this particular road. So, something.
Good thoughts, thank you. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Commissioner Dunn?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, we are finished with that item now. Let's see, up next is the information calendar, and I think we're going to pull some items off of that. Is that correct? Yes. Director Branson.
Do you want to take that, Terry? We were going to pull, for tomorrow, to be heard off info is 36, agenda item 36. There were some questions that we received from commissioners. And so Kyle Gradinger will provide a presentation tomorrow.
So 36 is going to be heard tomorrow. Okay,
Yes.
Terry?
So commissioners, also please note that item number 40 was pulled prior to the meeting. And so with that, items number 28 through 39 minus 36 are informational items deemed by staff not to raise any issues, and therefore individual items will not be presented unless specifically requested by a commissioner.
Okay. Do we have any requests? We do not. Thank you. Okay. Yes, item 40 was withdrawn, and 36 will be moved till tomorrow. Okay?
Thank you, Doug.
Okay. That was our information. Okay, on the consent calendar, I would like to have you pull off of consent item number 53, because I need to recuse myself on that one. And then item 54, Commissioner Norton needs to recuse. So let's take everything on the consent calendar except 53 and 54.
Okay, commissioners, items 41 through 57, with the exception of items number 54 and 53, are on the consent calendar. Please also note the following changes to the consent calendar as documented on the change list. For item number 48, 3 resolutions of necessity were pulled prior to the meeting. Resolutions C21812, 21817, and 21819. With these changes, Commission staff recommends the Commission approve the items listed on the consent calendar.
Okay, I heard first a motion by Commissioner Alvarado, a second by Commissioner Burke, or Van Konynenberg, Paul. Okay, it was a chorus there, so we'll call it for Paul. Okay, is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Okay, item 53, I would like to recuse myself. I am a trustee at the University of Redlands, and while this project does not specifically call out the Rail to Redlands project by name, I do believe it is the Rail to Redlands, so I'm going to excuse myself.
All right, item 53. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second? Okay, we have a motion by Burke, Kehoe, second by Tavaloni. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. You need to describe why you're leaving.
Yes, on item 54, even though I have nothing to do with this particular item, that because there's some work that we're doing on one metro contract, I'm going to step out.
Okay, item 54, do I have a motion? Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Burke, a second by Commissioner Tavaloni. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? But abstaining? That motion carries. Okay, now we can go, where do we go?
We have a reception at 5.
Oh, I'm between you and the party, so I guess we're going to call it a day here. So with that, before we go, I do want to let you all know that the commission met in closed session, and we have created a search committee. Vice Chair Von Konynenberg will chair that committee, and it is a committee of the whole. And we will be posting, if we haven't momentarily, the job description for the position. And so I would encourage all of you, and we will continue our delay of telling Susan how much we love her for now. But in terms of the business of the commission, we take this job very seriously in our role of helping us get executive director position filled. So with that, Commissioner Alvarado.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn in memory of Louis Tavoloni.
Second?
Okay, I think we will do that, and we just so appreciate the whole Tavoloni family and all that you have done for this region, and we want you to know that your whole transportation family is with you, Papa Joe. So with that, we're going to close this meeting in honor of Brother Louis. Meeting's adjourned.